Hey guys, good afternoon or good morning, depending on when you're watching this, seventh period or second period. I'm glad you're here. As I noted on the stream in Google Classroom, I have recorded this presentation for you because I'm up in New York, as I told you guys, helping out my parents as my mom recovers from surgery. So it turns out they needed me a little bit more than I thought they would. So I am recording this, but you're going to get the same presentation you'd get if I were doing it live. So there we are. Hey, there was a beep I wasn't expecting. Um, at this point, you guys should have already taken the quiz. So I'm going to skip right by that. Today we are reviewing the format of FRQs 1 through 3. Remember, we've already spent a good bit of time reviewing the format of the argumentative essay. So we're not going to do that again today. We're just going to look at 1, 2, and 3, the other 3. Again, you've already taken the quiz. Okay, so if you will head over to Google Classroom, you will see posted for you an assignment, FRQs number 1 through 3 review. So you're going to want to open that up and you're going to want to record your answers on that document as we're going over the information in this presentation. Obviously, because this is a video, you have the advantage of pausing me whenever you want to, which is also true when I am teaching you live, but people never pause me. So few questions. Today you can pause me whenever you like by pressing your spacebar or whatever. Again, quickly reviewing the format of the first 3 FRQs. Reminder, our class website has a notebook, an FRQ review notebook for you to use to study. Not going to need to use that today, but just wanted to remind you that it exists. All right, onwards. Test overview, in case you have not internalized this at this point. Remember, half of your exam is the multiple choice section. You'll have 80 minutes to do 55 questions. The other half of your exam is the 4 FRQs. In case you have forgotten, please note every one of the 4 FRQs is worth the same amount. Even though the argumentative essay will take you longer, it doesn't count any more than the other 3. Okay, so we're going to start now with the concept application FRQ. This one is fairly straightforward. 3 points total. It'll ask you to respond to a political scenario, some situation they will give you, explaining how it relates to a political principle, institution, process, policy, or behavior. You will notice again it is worth 3 total points. And the expectation is that you're going to use the scenario in your response to show your understanding. You're going to use it and apply what you have learned to the scenario. Fun example. Saul Levine, MD, believes that friendships are important in our lives because intimate friends share each other's experiences and in some ways they inhabit each other's lives. They often have similar viewpoints and values, and they may share similar backgrounds and traditions. They witness the milestones and unexpected changes of life, the highs and lows, celebrations and sadness. That's from Psychology Today, February 1st, 2016. After reading the passage, respond to A, B, and C below. A. Describe a relationship, friendship of your own that addresses the comments outlined in the scenario. So you're actually going to do this in the document that's assigned to you on Google Classroom. So the key word there is describe. You should be thinking 2, maybe 3 sentences. Then, step B, in the context of the scenario, of that blurb above, explain how the relationship described in part A can be affected by social media. So again, the verb is explain. You should be thinking 3 or more sentences. And C, once again, in the context of the scenario, explain how relationships between high school students can be affected by social media and their families' beliefs. So you're actually going to be providing an answer to this on the document that posted for you on Google Classroom. This just shows you what the format of the concept application is, but it's doing it in a way that is not immediately in the context of government and politics. Now, a real example might be something like this. Washington Post, August 23rd, 2016. Consumers complained after EpiPen maker Mylan, quote, hiked the price of the emergency auto-injector by $100 in recent months for no obvious reason. The price has increased 450% since 2004, when a dose cost $100 in today's dollars, to its current price of more than $600. The medication itself isn't expensive. Analysts calculate that the dosage contained in a single pen is worth about $1. So, after reading the scenario, you'll respond to A, B, and C below. A, describe a power Congress could use to address the comments outlined in the scenario. What could Congress do? You need to know what the constitutional powers of Congress are. B, in the context of the scenario, again, use something from the scenario, reference it, maybe even quote it. Explain how the use of congressional power described in Part A can be affected by its interaction with the presidency. So now you got to think checks and balances between the executive branch and the legislative branch. And C, in the context of the scenario, explain how the interaction between Congress and the presidency, so the one you identified in Part B, how can that interaction be affected by linkage institutions? So the media, elections, political parties, interest groups. Tips. This is the most straightforward of all the FRQs. Refer back to the prompt in your answer. Refer back to means use information from it directly, maybe even consider a little quote. This will ensure you are closing the loop, that you're actually answering the question. Be sure you're looking at the verbs. Is it identify? Is it describe? Is it explain? Make sure you are writing an appropriate number of sentences and getting into an appropriate amount of depth depending on the verb. I'm going to skip this one. All right. Another FRQ, the quantitative analysis, the numbers one, the one that involves numbers, numerical data. 4 points total. Analyzing quantitative data, identifying a trend or pattern, drawing a conclusion from the visual representation, and explaining how the data relates to a political principle, institution, process, policy, or behavior. 4 points total. Fun example. So the next 3 slides you can see here. Pie charts. What did you have for breakfast? What time did you wake up? How did you get to school today? These are going to be your data that you're going to have to look at to answer the question. Using the information graphic to answer the questions. A, identify the most common type of breakfast consumed by teens. Remember, identify. One sentence is fine. B, describe a similarity or difference in breakfast consumption as illustrated in the information graphic. So a similarity or difference. And draw a conclusion about that similarity or differences. So you'll see there's 2 points available in Part B. And C, explain how breakfast consumption, as shown in the information graphic, demonstrates the idea of time management. So there you can see 1 point for Part A, 2 points for Part B, 1 point for Part C. So use these charts and fill out your document. Real example. So maybe you get a map like this. Title, Public Education Spending, amount spent per pupil by state in 2014. Part A, identify the most common level of education spending by states in the Southeast. B, describe a similarity or difference in public education spending by state or region, as illustrated by the information graphic. And draw a conclusion about that similarity or difference. So there's 2 points. And C, explain how public education spending, as shown in the information graphic, demonstrates the principle of federalism. See, now they've pulled in a concept from outside of the map, and they're asking you to connect the data you're seeing in the map to the concept that you already know about. Make that connection, explain. There's your map if you want to look at it a little more closely. Quantitative tips, make sure you're reading the chart correctly. Oh my goodness. Make sure you look at the title. What is it really about? Make sure you understand whatever key they provide you. Take the time to examine it. Don't forget that Part B is worth 2 points, as I've said already. 2 points are contained in Part B. Make sure you're looking for and that you are writing enough to get both of them. And finally, the SCOTUS comparison, the court case one. This is the one we learned most recently. Compare a non-required Supreme Court case, so they will give you the facts of that non-required case, with a required case. These are the 15 you're supposed to know. explaining how information from the required case is relevant to that in the non-required one. So you're comparing one of the 15 to the one they give you. Okay. So, for fun example, don't you hate it when teachers try to be relevant? I don't know what movie you guys watched. I don't want to get into that. So to keep it clean, I'll pick a couple of old movies that are easy to compare and contrast. The movie Ants by DreamWorks and A Bug's Life by Disney Pixar, which came out at roughly the same time. A Bug's Life and Ants. There are the quote-unquote facts of the movies. So you can look at them, you can see similarities and differences. You should do that. You can pause if you want, and then, when you're done pausing and you're ready, SCOTUS comparison. Okay, using the movie's example A, identify a theme that is common to both movies, so a similarity. B, based on the theme identified in Part A, whatever you identified, explain why the storyline of whichever movie you picked led to a different ending than the ending in blank. So you have to look at the facts and explain why they diverged in how they ended. And C, describe a piece of information that members of the Academy, who nominate actors and directors for the Oscars, describe a piece of information they could take into consideration when making award nominations. See, that's an outside fact that they're bringing in. Real example. Monthly town board meetings in Greece, New York opened with a prayer given by clergy, selected from the congregations listed in a local directory. But nearly all the local churches were Christian, so nearly all the participating prayer givers were too. A lawsuit was filed alleging that the town violated the Constitution by preferring Christians over other religious groups and by sponsoring sectarian prayers. Sectarian means of one religion. Petitioners sought to limit the town to, quote, inclusive and ecumenical, that means could be of any religion, prayers that referred only to a generic God. In the ensuing case, Town of Greece versus Galloway, 2014, the Supreme Court held in a 5-4 decision that no constitutional violation existed. The majority opinion stated that legislative prayer in the situation lent gravity to public business, reminded lawmakers to transcend petty differences to pursue a higher purpose, reflected values that were part of the nation's heritage, provided a spirit of cooperation, and celebrated the changing of seasons. The audience was primarily lawmakers themselves, and though many bowed their heads during the prayer, they did not solicit or ask for similar gestures by the public. It was delivered as a ceremonial portion of the town's meeting. So using the Greece v. Galloway example, identify the constitutional clause that's common to both of them. You should be able to do that. B, based on the constitutional clause identified in Part A, explain why the facts of Engel v. Vitale. Okay, there's your required case. That's the one you already have to know about. How do the facts of that case lead to a different holding than the case of Greece v. Galloway, which they just now told you about? How are they different? And C, describe an action that members of the public who disagree with the holding in Greece versus Galloway, who disagree with the decision, what could members of the public do to limit its impact? Tips. Read the question before you read the passage. Yes. Second, be very specific when identifying clauses or issues. Get as specific as you can. 14th Amendment, maybe say due process clause. First Amendment, don't just stop there. Say free exercise clause. Remember, Part B is worth 2 points. Remember, Part B is worth 2 points. In Part B, even though it doesn't say it, you have to show adequate knowledge of the facts of the required case before you do the compare and contrast or whatever they ask you to do. Argumentative essay, that thesis one, we've already done this one. So we're not going to go over it now. Now you're ready to take the AP government exam, right? Here's a nice short slide if you want to compare and contrast the different FRQs. Not a bad thing to look at. And that's what we did today. Next class, as it says, we're going to do sample grading of these 3 types of FRQs. Yes, we'll see what you think about how these essays should be scored. Homework, last 2 progress checks, 4 and 5, units 4 and 5. And turn in the Unit 6 multiple choice review notebook once you've completed those last 2 progress checks. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Enjoy your weekend. I will be live and back with you next week. Take care.